So there are two acts of interpretation to perform: breaking the myth open and fossicking around for its inside meaning. I think just to break the myth open without offering anything in response is an act of cultural vandalism, and I think Rachel would agree with me on that. This is dangerous to tradition and has no redemptive value. While the first act looks like a Richard Dawkins act, looks like atheism, the second act is actually an act of reparation, of saying, okay, we can't accept the outside of this myth, but what's going on the inside, and what is it telling us? And that's what Rachel referred to as the mythopoetic dimension of religion. And I don't think any of us should give that away, because I think that has a saving grace. So my work is paradoxical. It both is deconstructive and reconstructive. And I think that to promote religion today, we first have to demote it, ironically, from its status as history. Now, the new atheists that I've already mentioned, the Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens and so on, do have something in common with my project, but they stop at the stage of destruction. They squash the myths, demolish a host of sort of an army of straw men and women, as it were, and they say, end of story, this is all there is. But to me, the real adventure begins where Dawkins and Hitchens leave off. What is behind the myth? To what strange truth does it point? Why has this particular symbol been used so carefully by these writers of Scripture? And the atheists seem to me get part of the way. We are clearly in an atheistic phase in Australia at the moment. They clear the decks, but they don't invite the inside meaning back. I'm not opposed to them, like many religious people are, but simply believe they actually don't go far enough. Of course the metaphors aren't scientifically valid, but they are philosophically and mythopoetically valid. So my book is not saying that the task of interpretation is something we perform on a text written by benighted minds who thought they were recording history. My argument is actually the opposite of this. I believe the scripture writers were fully cognizant of what they were doing, and they understood it as a literary convention of the time. If something was truly holy, it could only be narrated in myth, symbol and metaphor, as history was considered too flat and banal to be able to actually tell sacred stories. And when I discovered this quote, which appears in the book by Dominique Cressant from Chicago, I think, he said, quote, "My point is not that those ancient people told literal stories and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally." So they knew what they were doing, we don't. And that was my eureka moment.